gave the Pope a rhino, thought lost on its horn. The leopard from Inferno, the night I lost was sworn. For being staunch doesn't mean you can't launch an all-out attack. Though it may rush through the underbrush, at least it's still on track. I gave the Pope a rhino to show which path is true. Everything that's left I'll give to you. Everything that's left I'll give to you. I gave the Tsar a sturgeon from the Caspian Sea. We associate the region with instability. By doubling the locks, may one replenish stocks in the longer term. Though its hold is slender, we're told, at least its grasp is firm. I gave the Tsar a sturgeon to show it's been renewed. Everything that's left I'll give to you. Everything that's left I'll give to you. My bowl of burning gold, my script of joy, immortal diet, a bar of soap I stole from the Johannesburg Hyannis Regency. Charles the Bold, a first edition of Johnny Panic, a first-class dinner roll from the RMS Titanic lost at sea. Rembrandt's recipe for raw umber, a bamboo strainer and a sieve to catch prime numbers, the bootlace tie worn by a Civ-2, a bootleg of the expensive winos the tortoise we've so far outlived, a spare black rhino. Everything that's left I'll give to you, to you, to you, to you. Prince a diamond I picked up in the grass. He may yet seize the moment through a pane of glass. We know that to cower in a crystal tower makes it hard to find a match. Though he's barely touched the surface as such, at least that surface is scratched. I gave the Prince a diamond to show how to cut through. Everything that's left I'll give to you. Everything that's left I'll give to you. Everything that's left I'll give to you. Everything that's left I'll give to you.
That was I Gave the Pope a Rhino by Rogue Oliphant, featuring Chris Harford on guitar and Ray Kubian on cajon. Ray Kubian wrote the music for the song. The words are by myself, Paul Muldoon, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this digital edition of Muldoon's Picnic. The original Muldoon's Picnic was a popular variety show in New York in the late 19th century. Variety continues to be a feature of our show today, and we'll be hearing from a range of artists. Archived recordings of Richard Thompson and Zara Phillips, Puddles the Clown, and Duke Special, along with brand new contributions from the poet Jana Prikryl and our first guest, Roger Rosenblatt. Roger Rosenblatt is a memoirist, an essayist, a novelist. He's worked for Time magazine, the Washington Post, and the PBS NewsHour. He's now a distinguished professor at Stony Brook. Among his best-known works are Making Toast, The Boy Detective, and Thomas Murphy. It's a pleasure to welcome Roger Rosenblatt.
I'm Roger Rosenblatt, and I'm here at the kind invitation of Paul Muldoon, the great Muldoon, known as himself. I'm here at the invitation of himself to read a little and to talk a bit about Ireland. Ireland, the country of my heart. It became the country of my heart in college under John Kelleher. I studied under the great scholar John Kelleher. And then when I graduated, I had a Fulbright to go to Ireland. I was one of two Fulbrights in Ireland that year, the other being Maureen Murphy, then Maureen O'Rourke, who remains a lifetime friend. Wonderful writer she is, and a wonderful scholar. My wife Ginny and I had the greatest time ever in Ireland. It was just a wonderful, we had never been to Europe before in those days. It was an unusual thing for young people to go to Europe. We had a wonderful time and wonderful experience. Our first child was conceived in Ireland. Everything was brilliant, as they say, about the experience, except the Irish seemed to have a hard time pronouncing my name, Rosenblatt. I don't know what was so difficult about Rosenblatt. It didn't seem to me to be any harder than Gil Hooley or Miles Nagopoline. But they couldn't do Rosenblatt, and nonetheless, because the Irish are so gracious and polite, they never said so directly. The postman, the mailman who came to the house, would always say, good morning, Mr. Rosenblatt. The most interesting interpretation of the name came at a book auction. One evening, Ginny and I went down to St. Stephen's Green, and there was this great auction house, great 19th century auction house, full, dark, and the lights dimmed, great piles of books all over the place. And one little pile of books, called A Lot of Books, appealed to me because at the top of it was Flann O'Brien's That Swim Two Birds. It was the first edition of Flann O'Brien's That Swim Two Birds, and I wanted it. We hardly had any money. We hardly had any money all year. But I had a pound or two, and I bid, let's say £2. I can't remember. And sure enough, I won. I won Flann O'Brien's book. And the auctioneer, who was 150 feet away, far away at the end of the hall, yells out, "Name, please." "Rosenblatt," I say. Terrible hush in the hall. "Name, please," he repeats, as if I had gotten it wrong. "Rosenblatt," I say. There's murmuring and again a silence. "Could you let me have that one more time?" "Rosenblatt," I say. "Rosenblatt, Rosenblatt," getting aggressive. I see him write something down. The auction proceeds. At the end of the evening, Ginny and I went up to pick up the book that we had won. And sure enough, it was in a package, and on the package was written the name that the auctioneer thought he heard, Frozenwem, with two M's. I suppose the two M's distinguish it from the Clare Frozenwems and the Cork Frozenwems. In any case, I've kept that name to this day. One of the most wonderful parts of that year was going out to Connemara. Ginny was pregnant and did not go with me, but I went out to Connemara. And there, as you probably know, is Ireland, in the rocks, in the hardness, and in the flowers that come up between the rocks, and the beauty of the place. The beauty and the hardness. And a few years ago, I went back to the Aran Islands, in that same area of Connemara. Went back to the Aran Islands, and on Inishmaan, thought of writing Thomas Murphy, a novel about an Irish poet living in New York. And so I did. An Irish poet living in New York whose wife Una has just died of cancer, and whose best friend, a gay lawyer named Greenberg, had just died too. He had been murdered. But he still has in this world Maura, his wonderful daughter, his feisty daughter, with whom he has a tug of war relationship, as I did with my own daughter. and his grandson William. So the first time we see Maura is in this exchange with her dad, and she has just taken him to a clinic because she's worried that he's starting to lose it, fearing dementia. He, of course, he's leaving fires going and things like that. And he, of course, misbehaves terribly at the clinic. And she feels compelled to write him a gracious note, so she does. Dear Murph, everyone calls him Murph. Dear Murph, it occurs to me, your brooding mind being what it is, that you may think I'm trying to lock you up in the loony bin. I'm not. You probably ought to be locked up in the loony bin, but that condition long preceded your recent shenanigans. I'm concerned that you'll harm yourself. It's that simple. Your dutiful and loving daughter, Maura. Dear dutiful and loving, I'm sorry, but I never had a daughter, and I don't know anyone named Maura. My friend Greenberg used to tell me about a place called Maury's with a table in it. Is that you? Or are you the old gray mare who ain't what she used to be, but who is? Dear Murph, go yourself. Dear Maura, oh, now I remember you. And here is Murphy with his father. And his father, he thinks back to a time when his father was dying and he was sleeping on the bed, on a straw mat, beside his father's bed in Inishmont. Noiseless, I have drawn my straw pallet to lie on the floor beside my Da's bed. Above, he breathes like the polar sea. He floats in his sleep. I would like to ride the current with him, the two of us on a mare heading to deep waters under the sea's sun. But he is alone in his dying as I am alone in my living. I lie on my makeshift bed, my arms behind my head like angel wings. Every so often I look up. He begins to appear as a glass ink bottle into which I may dip my pen. I dip my pen in my father and write what he tells me. Ah, penny, brown penny, brown penny. And now I am reborn, a new child again, learning to make my way in the new world. What is a rock? What is a daisy? Hours pass and I crawl around the poem I write of him and me. Soon I pull myself upright, vertical man, and I write of that as my father instructs me. Automatic writing. Then it stops. And there are no further instructions, so I put down my pen and cap the ink bottle, resting my head on the parchment of his arms. And here is Murph walking in New York, and I think of the New York now in this terrible pandemic, this dreadful time, and how he loves New York, and how all New Yorkers, and I'm one, love New York and hate to see it living in fear and in this terrible disease and the sound of sirens. This long precedes the pandemic, of course, but you get the feeling of New York, of what Murph says and how he feels about it. Whereas today I walk the city with my head dug in like a plow, mired. I hate these moods, their selfishness grotesque. Around me march my beautiful New Yorkers with their cowled faces, flayed by the wind, fresh from their vile mills. They hear the drumming of real graves while I, fancy me, indulge myself in a pastime. Greenberg would have ribbed me without mercy. Una too. Me too. Snap out of it, Murph. In a day, an hour, I will be on a high again, thrilled to the bone to be permitted life and poetry. Thrilled to have Maura with me and to be able to read William to sleep twice a week, while they, my beautiful New Yorkers, have not the luxury of mood swings. Or of moods at all, for Christ's sake. Courage with resignation. That's their bloody mood. One mood forever, how I adore them. Though I would not tell them so, lest I sound patronizing as if I were accepting them, while the opposite is true. They accept me. Me, the freakish exception to the rules of their existence. what one must do as a poet before placing the right words in the right order, before wandering lonely as a cloud, or summoning a second coming, is to recognize the precious gift of one's perch, and then walk with one's fellow citizens and feel their powerless power. I push my body into my beautiful New Yorkers and vanish with them in the brown, humiliating earth.
Roger Rosenblatt. Next up, Rogue Oliphant, the house band for Muldoon's picnic. And this particular manifestation of Rogue Oliphant has Couch O'Riordan on bass, Sim Kane on drums, David Mansfield on lead guitar, and then on guitars, Chris Harford and Warren Zanes. Warren Zanes wrote the music for this song and he sings it here. It's a song that draws on the imagery of the world of Cosa Nostra, and it's called Made Man.
I was caught in the crossfire when a hitman for hire alerted the town crier. You were mounting a dawn ray, you'd proved you could let rip, shooting from the hip when we took that last trip up to the Palisades. You may pistol whip my boy choir, you may give me a fat lip, I'll never wear a wire, I'll never flip, I'll never turn a coat on a friend of mine. I took a blood oath, I'm a made man, I'm a made man. I took a blood oath, I'm a made man, I'm a made man. I was eating rainbow trout on a bed of Brussels sprouts when I began to doubt my own sense I'd been betrayed. You proved your nerves of steel after the Vegas deal when Eddie went with the renegades. You may hollow heel my Boy Scout, you may cuff me to the wheel, I'll never rat you out, I'll never squeal, I'll never turn my coat on a friend of mine. I took a blood oath, I'm a made man, I'm a made man. I took a blood oath, I'm a made man, I'm a made man. Not just another wise guy, wailing Batman and boxcar. Not since you made me recognize the beauty of this thing of ours. Not since you made me recognize the beauty of this thing of ours. I took a blood oath. I took a blood oath. Caught up in the sting simply because I chose to fling my hat into your ring like a hand grenade. You proved your perfect pitch the night you flicked a switch and then addressed the itch between my shoulder blades. You may triple twitch my bowstring, you may dump me in a ditch. You know I'll never sin, I'll never snitch,
Rogue Oliphant with Made Man. The poet Jana Prikryl was born in the Czech Republic, though she's lived in Canada and Ireland, and now in Brooklyn. She's a senior editor for the New York Review of Books. Her two main collections of poetry are The After Party and No Matter. She's described by James Wood as one of the most original voices of her generation. Jana Prikryl.
Hi everybody, thank you for having me. Thank you, Paul, for inviting me to join, and thank you to the Irish Arts Centre for making this whole thing possible right now when so much is impossible and so much is painful. I thought I'd read a few poems from my last book, No Matter. There are maybe 6 or 7 poems in the book that are all called waves, and I'm going to start with 2 of the waves. Waves. True little waves from high above in a window seat. So few of you have enough of yourselves to fold over onto, forming a dress you wear out instantly. The most part of you is continuous skin with its own living texture curving over the bottom, a bone. Though often enough, on land it appears you're falling all over yourselves to be tallest. Each of you prim threat of drowning should I contemplate a swim. The window seat is just a way of taking in the danger all at once, breathing the ultimatum in and trying to breathe it back out at decent intervals. Waves. The wind reeled up Broadway, kicking a plastic bag as high as the window cleaners at 57th Street, bringing hands to lapels as hairdos slapped sideways and up. Sunlight hit the wind. Wind fell through the light, and everybody, all of a sudden, fought to hold a disassembling trapeze. That night the wind remade itself and shot down 3rd Avenue, now a black wind, clear-headed, soaked with dark water repeatedly and repeatedly wrung out. To walk up the street was to be rinsed, to lean into the current and hear its drowned voices, hear the one voice just stating the obvious. And given the quasi or perhaps entirely musical nature of Muldoon's Picnic, I thought I had to read this poem called Bowie. I wrote it a year or 2 after he died. Bowie. David Bowie drove. 5 or 6 piled in a van, but I'm seated right behind him, whose driving's not bad. It's good, but fast, faster, and so I clutch his hand. Ideas to show us the city. It is an elsewhere. Brushed steel dolomites miles in the air, with highways scored on them. He made me get out once and swing those miles up in a sort of bucket to touch, swing over and feel with my finger the side of a mountain, quilt made of steel, each knotted thread briar of wire. With my fear of heights, I made with that live current a circuit to please him and made it. And the whole long day he drove, he held my hand up over his shoulder, tight in his hand, gripping. No danger, he'd let go. Antidote. So though he seemed never to hear me imploring, please slow down, I could not love him more. And when he dropped us off beside his ocean, he driving on in, us planted there at a loss, I texted everyone, Y/N, canvassing if given the day's events I might text him, be expected to text him, to thank him, my sneakers sinking in sand, blinking, clutching my phone, holding out for a Y. Thank you.
Jana Prikryl. Our next archived recording of Rogue Oliphant features a song called Wanted. The music was written by Chris Harford, and he also sings the song. Wanted.
I try to take no chances in my brushes with the law. In Orange and Ulster counties, I've been followed by bloodhounds. When a sheriff posts a bounty, I go post haste aground. I found myself at a loss where the bay meets the bayou. But I'm not in your crosshairs, I'm not wanted by you. I'm just not wanted, just not wanted, I'm just not wanted by you. In Ohio and Oklahoma, I've enjoyed some acclaim. When Kim comes out of her coma, she'll surely clear my name. The police always give me a grilling when we meet face to face. They think there's nothing more thrilling than the thrill of the chase. I've been tracked by men in waders, shadowed by a gumshoe. But I'm not on your radar, I'm not wanted by you. I'm just not wanted, just not wanted, just not wanted by you. I've been wanted in Nassau, wanted in Tennessee. You were granted a decree, Nisi, 'cause you need to be free. The judge handed down his sentence, although he lost my scent. He seemed to say repentance means I should repent. I'd love to once more in your trust when my case comes up for review. But I'm not your person of interest, I'm not wanted by you. Just not wanted, just not wanted, just not wanted by you. Just not wanted, just not wanted, I'm just not wanted by you.
That was Chris Harford and Rogue Oliphant with Wanted. And now it's time to welcome back Roger Rosenblatt.
This is Roger Rosenblatt responding to Paul Muldoon's kind invitation to read some, and I'll read some more from Thomas Murphy, my novel, about an Irish poet living in New York whose wife Una has died when we meet him in the novel. And his best friend Greenberg has also died, but he's with his daughter Maura and his grandson William. And he meets a young woman, Sarah, a blind woman, with whom he begins to fall in love. And that's really how the story moves on. But for the moment, he's thinking of Una and thinking of being with her in her sickness. When the sickness was devouring Una as she lay like a queen in our palatial bedroom, devouring her at such a rate that you could see the body wither as you sat with her, I asked, did she recall the time of her past good health? She said she could no more recall being robust than she could in health recall the pain and lassitude of illness. If we were able to return to the past, in body as well as in mind, she said, that would be grand. But it is part of nature's unfairness that we can remember that we were healthy at an earlier time without feeling any of it. It is like a story someone read to us a long, long time ago. All the days before this blight, she said, are a throng of lights on a shore at night, and I am a ship borne out. And here's Murph talking about poetry. He talks a lot about poetry and his love of it in this novel. Here he's talking about the destiny that poets feel, the destiny not just of being a poet, but the destiny within the poem, how the poem is led by mysterious forces. As a poet, I have to believe in God, though I have little affection for the God I believe in, and he has none for me, none that he shows at any rate. I must believe nonetheless, or I could not write, structure, anything. The whole process of writing is mystical to me, at least, mystical and beyond my reach. Have I told you about this? I begin a poem with an image out of nowhere. Where did that come from? And at once I suspect I am part of a plan, and the poem I've begun is part of a plan. The process of writing, then, is the progression towards someone else's design. And who might that someone else be but God? It's why I think whenever a poet arrives at the end of his poem, the moment is always unsatisfactory, a letdown. Because you think, is this all he had in mind? But there you are nonetheless, sweating like a pig and breathing hard, and knowing you've tried your hardest to fulfill what was decreed, preordained, and of course you failed. It's why I tend to write simple poems with rocks in them. I have throes of fanciness in me. I have to beat them down sometimes, but generally I dismiss them as false thinking, as fiddling with knowledge or language for the silly sake of doing it. I know that dandyism does not make for real poetry. This comes from my Da, too. He could not stand waste of time or behavior or language. He'd tell me, most talk is horseshit, but not as useful. So he always spoke in a straightforward way, putting one word in a slot where a lesser man would have stuffed three. Thus, every word he said to me was beautiful. There's a connection between this simplicity and my feeling that a poem of mine has been written before I write it, that I am tracing the original drawing the way children trace. And in that same way, the tracing is different from the drawing beneath it, even if it follows the lines as carefully as a child is able to. As a poet, there's always something uniquely yours in the traced work, something your own that even the original artist may not have divined. Like those copyists of the old masters who were compelled to leave a clue that they, mere copyists, existed too. What happens then, even though you know you have failed to follow the plan perfectly, is that you've done something worthwhile on your own, imperfectly. You have kept it simple, but it is not simple. The poem has taken you to the edge of the sea, to the point where the vast sea is revealed. And though you know you cannot recreate the sea with all its welts and fathoms, with its treasure ships half buried in the sand on the bottom, among the kelp and the killing fish and its killing winds and manacles, still, you have brought yourself to the brink of revelation on that shore. And the beginning of revelation is, for all intents and purposes, revelation. You never crash if you go full tilt. It takes a kind of courage to write a poem. My ma's and my da's courage, and Una's when she was certain she was doomed, and Sarah's courage too, when she was little and knew she had to live all her coming days in the dark, and yet got on with it. The courage to gun it, even though you're preordained to fail. because between that certainty and the attempt to refute it is life, boyo. Dreadful, gorgeous life.
Roger Rosenblatt. In our next piece of music, Rogue Oliphant is joined by two special guests, Zara Phillips and the legendary Richard Thompson, with a version of a W.B. Yeats number that should surely have made it into the Billboard Hot 100, Down by the Sally Gardens.
Here we go. Down by the Sally Gardens, my love and I did meet. She crossed the Sally Gardens with little snow white feet. She begged me take life easy as the leaves grow on the trees. But I was young and foolish, and with her did not agree. In a field down by the river, my love and I did stand. Upon my leaning shoulder, she laid her snow white hand. She begged me take life easy as the grass grows on the weeds. But I was young and foolish, and now I'm full of tears. Down by the Sally Gardens, my love and I did meet. She crossed the Sally Gardens on little snow white feet. Oh, she begged me take life easy as the leaves grow on the trees. But I was young and foolish, and with her did not agree. But I was young and foolish, and with her did not agree.
was down by the Sally Gardens with Rogue Oliphant featuring Zara Phillips and Richard Thompson, rock and roll royalty. And that just happens to be the title of the next piece by Rogue Oliphant. The music was written by our drummer, Ray Kubian, but it's sung here by the remarkable Puddles the Clown. So Rogue Oliphant with Puddles the Clown on rock and roll royalty.
I heard screaming Lord Such. It's clear that an aristocrat can have that common touch. I'm pretty sure the Viscounts ruled with an iron hand. Not been to Sarajevo, but I've heard Franz Ferdinand. I heard the Queen, I heard the King, so far as I could see. You're the nearest thing to rock and roll royalty. You're the nearest thing to rock and roll royalty. I heard Nicky and the Nobles, I heard the Baron Knights. Some musicians seem to think they got a God-given right. I even heard the artist formerly known as Prince. Some say he was a genius. I'm pretty much convinced. I heard the Queen, I heard the King, so far as I can see. You're the nearest thing to rock and roll royalty. You're the nearest thing to rock and roll royalty. I heard the Monarchs, I heard Steele, the Seaver, and the Dukes. I know Tyrannosaurus Rex had some killer hooks. Some people say Sir No Coward from the House of Glam. and roll royalty. You're the nearest thing to rock and roll royalty. You're the nearest thing to rock and roll royalty.
Ladies and gentlemen, Puddles.
Rogue Oliphant featuring Puddles the Clown on Rock and Roll Royalty. Time now to welcome back Jana Prikryl.
Hi again. This is a poem called Stoic. It, like a lot of my last book, takes place in New York City. This one in Manhattan. Stoic. Upper East Side's where you want to cultivate friends. Its mediocre restaurants won't close or send the delivery guys home on their bikes with the hand muffs, giant papier-mâché ear horns, no use against hurricanes. You hear them coming, but can't endure them. In this city, friendship's the main mode of disaster prep. Basements and sub-basements busy, with boilers switching on and off, inflicting real wear and tear on just the effort of getting in touch with those you don't want to lose touch with yet. I never saw the guys draw their bikes through the subway's emergency doors, so they must steer those ear horns deep into the outer boroughs to sleep a few hours before pedaling back to one of the 10 or 12 downtowns to do it over. Those the Zip's real friends should have, and to be real, be necessary. Everyone has the one or two friends from back then whose points can afford to equal 0, though not perhaps without some penalty being inflicted all the time. Nobody needs more like you, so then I found it in myself because I had to, the one or two things that make it endurable here, and what they boil down to is indifference. This is another poem born of staring at and thinking about Manhattan for probably too long. At some point it occurred to me that certain mid-century skyscrapers had the proportion of gravestones. And that's more or less where this poem came from. It's called Shades. The island trumpets these feelingly elongated gravestones. Slabs perforated with windows and workers, hollow, available, you can enter any building now, and lunchtime hypothesized our bodies being one, partaking of a single bolt of material, much the way the clockwork symptoms of a virus argue against your uniqueness, though you groaned uniquely. Did you? Even so, the nature of your relation to chance was a thing you couldn't know unless things were really very irreversible. And though you couldn't, you named it, dressed it up or down, oppressed by the depth of your knowledge. Archaeologist, of your own actuarials in exile. Hearth fires burned in the squares of windows closed to you all afternoon till the sun went down into Jersey. How entitled not to feel nettled you felt. How lonely. How cozy. This is a poem called Vertical. And it's one of several poems in the book, thinking about the subway in New York. So when I say the B, I mean the B train. Vertical. One night the B took a turn. My ears popped. People in the orange love seats facing forward had to hang on to something. Looking up, I see that man yawning at a pole, his uncle who never had a hard word for us, who prospered under every regime. He's young again and trying like everybody else to find upright against the angle of the floor. Each car articulated at a distinct angle, producing different pitches of screams. No telling how near the schism in the schist will bring us to the core. Each person strobing past on their own line, strains to hear the faint, blurred station names. And this, I'll close with a sonnet that's called Sibyl. It takes off on the image of the Sibyl in Virgil's Aeneid, where she sits in the cave and scrawls her forecasts on oak leaves. Sibyl. I made another angry swipe at it, for I'd been told that anger didn't put it off, disgust its antipasto, insult a starch it loaded with various chutneys. Was only following the script to amp that seer's eyeshadow when it hit me as riddles it scribbled on fallen leaves were tossed up by the hottest breeze, that only a poet would make the tree oak. Those lobes, those tines would hardly fit a syllable, and felt so close to one who'd plant such little jokes, an orchard ripening around the pits, while the seer sits inside a stone and stuffs her face with it. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.
Jana Prikryl there, and we want to thank her and the other guests on this digital Muldoon's picnic. Roger Rosenblatt, Puddles the Clown, Zara Phillips, and Richard Thompson. We're grateful to John Murray for sound, to Christopher Gorzelnik, of course, for lights and life enhancement in every way, to Rachel Gilkey and Kestrel Wolgamuth from Irish Art Centre. And here to play us out is Rogue Oliphant again. In this particular manifestation, Chris Harford, Sim Kane, David Mansfield, Carter O'Riordan and Warren Zanes, with a special guest, Duke Special. And we hope very much to be able to come back into your life as soon as we possibly can.
We were introduced by Bruce at the Stone Pony. All that concentrated juice, standing room only. You were with some suit from EMI or Sony who was so full of toot he called for Moni Moni. You came back to the slum, the squat with Lars and Sammy. Then a Lanois green thumb grew us a golden Grammy. When we reached number one, we reached for our Swami to make a comeback, baby. It's time to come back. Come back to me. Come back, baby, come back. Come back, don't you see? It's time to make the comeback. Come back, baby, to me.
Then our master's voice told us it was cool to park the Rolls Royce in the swimming pool. Our drugs of choice were flown from Istanbul through a girl called Joyce, whose real name was Mule. We loved the paparazzi flash, paparazzi zoo. When we finished our stash of magic mushrooms, we'd pay in cash for a kilo of cartoon. Come back to trash another hotel room. Come back, baby. Come back to me.
Come back, baby, come back. Come back, don't you see? It's time to make a comeback. Come back, baby, to me.
When we broke up, we swore we'd never kiss and tell, never speak to each other until hell freezes over, or whatever hell does when it's co-produced by Eno and Was. But behind the music and where are they now have pointed the way, shown us how to take a leaf from Plant and Page and Fleetwood Mac, set the stage for a comeback. A comeback, don't you see? It's time to come back. Come back to me.
Come back, baby, come back. Come back, don't you see? It's time to make a comeback. Come back, baby, to me.
Oh, we'd no sooner said farewell, it was time to reunite. Flames likelier to swell in a diminished light. For though we're a hard sell, what with the cellulite, we're still clear as a bell. We're still pretty tight. So, let's remember the fans as we fan the embers and hit the Meadowlands this coming September. When we hold each other's hands, baby, let's remember we're just another band with only 2 surviving members. Making a comeback. Come back, don't you see? It's time to come back. Come back to me.
Come back, baby, come back.
Come back to me.
Come back, don't you see? It's time to make a comeback. Come back,
Cassidy.